Assalamu alaikum. I'm Dr. Lubnani, Associate Professor from Gynae Unit 2. The topic of today's class is subfertility. So we are going to discuss the etiology, investigations of infertility, and as well as its management. Sorry for interruption. Okay, so we are starting with the subfertility. The learning objectives of this lecture is that you should be able to know the definition of subfertility and to know the etiology of female infertility and investigations for both male and female infertility, and then interpret the semen report and later on further management. Regarding definition of subfertility, it is failure to conceive after 1 year of regular and unprotected intercourse. There are two types of fertility, primary and secondary. Primary means the couple has never conceived. Secondary means previously they have conceived once or twice, and then afterwards, since 2 years, they are unable to conceive. The incidence is 1 in 7 couples. In UK, 30% of subfertility caused by male factor, 30% by female factor, and 25% unexplained, and 15% both male and female or other causes. So equally distribution of subfertility among male and the female. The natural conception, usually a healthy couple have 18 to 20% chance of conceiving in a single menstrual cycle. Within 6 months, 70% couple conceive. After 12 months or after a year, 80% conceive. And after 2 years or 24 months, 90% of the couple they conceive. The female fertility falls after the age of 36 years. So the age, in case of female, the age is very important. As with the advancing age, the number of oocytes becomes less. So it has been seen that after 36 years, the female fertility declines, and male fertility falls after 50 years. Causes of subfertility. Number 1 is ovulatory disorders. Ovulatory disorders includes this problem in ovulation, which is seen in polycystic ovarian syndrome. Hypothalamic disorders such as hypothalamic hypogonadism, pituitary disease such as causing hyperprolactinemia, that is increase in the prolactin level, and thyroid disorders. Tubal infertility means the problem may be in the tube. So the main causes in the female will be ovulatory problems. Number 2, tubal problems. That means the tubes, fallopian tubes may be damaged in 14% of the couple, and that may cause infertility in the woman. The main causes of tubal damage is chlamydia. This is a pathogen which is one of the most common causes of pelvic inflammatory disease in female. It may be due to pelvic infection related to some other problem, or pelvic abscess which may be caused by appendicitis, or sometimes the woman may had appendix which has led to appendicitis, and that can lead to a problem to the tubes as well. Bowel disorders, history of septic abortion, history of tuberculosis, or some iatrogenic causes as well can lead to tubal damage. The previous history of pelvic or abdominal surgery is also one of the causes which can compromise tubal patency and function in the female. Endometriosis is the presence of endometrial-like tissue in the uterus that may cause that may lead to mechanical tubal damage due to adhesion formation. So that means if a woman is suffering from endometriosis, and I hope you had the lecture of endometriosis, because this will cause severe dysmenorrhea, severe dyspareunia, and this is one of the causes of the infertility in the female. And usually this is picked up on history taking, examination, and later on ultrasound or laparoscopy can diagnose endometriosis. Endometriosis in severe cases can lead to different adhesion formation, and that can lead to mechanical tubal damage. Uterine factors include submucous leiomyoma, that is fibroids, congenital uterine abnormality in 2% of the women, endometrial polyps, and intrauterine adhesions. That means the presence of adhesions in the endometrium can lead to a little bit of, you can say, blockage in the uterine cavity that may inhibit implantation of the ova. So these are the potential causes of infertility as the uterine causes. Unexplained infertility means after completion of standard investigations of infertility in both male and females, they fail to relieve a cause in 15% of cases, then that is unexplained. That means when all investigations are normal, we don't find any cause in both the partners, and still they are unable to conceive. That is called unexplained infertility, and 15% of the couple suffer from this type of infertility. The male factor includes orchitis, inflammation of the testis, undescended or torsion of testis, pelvic radiotherapy or surgery, diabetes, occupational hazards, erectile dysfunctions, ejaculatory problems, aneuploidy of sex chromosomes, structural abnormalities, and microdeletions. So when you take history of a couple who has come with subfertility, there are certain points which you need to ask. Ideally, both the partners should be present when you take history. The age of the partners are important. In case of female, the age is a very significant cause of infertility. Length of time spending trying for the pregnancy. This is what the questions you will ask in the history. And any previous pregnancy, even if it had ended up in abortion or miscarriage, vital frequency, occupation, then general gynecological history, any history of dysmenorrhea, severe dysmenorrhea, any history of PCOS, oligomenorrhea, menorrhagia, any history of pelvic inflammatory disease regarding that you can ask the chronic vaginal discharge and the type of discharge, any treatment taken, history, previous history, medical and surgical history, whether they had suffered from some disease or they had the woman had undergone some surgery due to some ovarian cyst or ovarian tumor or any other surgery such as appendicectomy. Same medical and surgical history from the male has to be taken. Or previously they have taken any treatment, and for how long that treatment they took and what was the result of the treatment. Then history of cervical smear or pap test should also be taken from the female. This may not be related with the infertility, but this is a screening test which should be done ideally in all women of reproductive age. Then general health history of mumps and measles, especially in males. History of any testicular trauma or surgery to testis, any accident, and previously any pregnancy, or maybe you always ask about the marriages. Maybe the husband already had one marriage and maybe having a child from the first marriage. So this is very important, whether this is their first pregnancy of both partners or just second pregnancy, and if it is second pregnancy, whether they had any children from the first pregnancy or not. After that, general physical examination should be done for blood pressure, height, and weight, that is BMI, should be calculated. And then after general examination, pelvic examination should be carried out to find out any local cause such as vaginal discharge, polyp, or uterus, the size of the uterus, whether it is fixed or mobile. Maybe that will indicate some sort of endometriosis. Always check for thyroid enlargement and galactorrhea, because that may indicate hyperprolactinemia. And for the male, ideally the male partner should be checked by a male doctor. The female doctors are not supposed to examine the male partner. They are usually sent to urologist or the person who's expert in subfertility for the male subfertility. So we normally refer that male in case we find that there is some problem or in the history, or there's a history of any orchitis, or there's undescended testes, or any surgery. So ideally the examination of the male partner should be carried out by a urologist. Regarding investigations, we can divide the investigation female and the male. The female, after investigation, certain investigation has to be carried out. Number one, if the history is very much suggestive of polycystic ovarian syndrome, then we have to check for the serum follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. And this is normally done on the second day of the cycle to get the results. Serum prolactin and serum TSH. Prolactin for the hyperprolactinemia, and serum TSH is thyroid stimulating hormone for the thyroid disorders. They can be done on any day of the cycle. Same way, anti-Müllerian hormone can be done on any day of the cycle. That will tell us about the presence of ova, or the presence of oocyte in the female. For the ovulation, for checking the ovulation, either we can go for ultrasound on 12th day of the cycle, or we can have mid-luteal progesterone, that is in the second half or from 19 to 20 day of the cycle. Mid-luteal progesterone is checked. If that comes out to be more than 5, then it means that the woman is having ovulation, is ovulating. But nowadays the mostly we check ovulation by doing the follicle tracking. That can tell us about the mature follicle on 12th day of the cycle, so that we can know that whether the woman is ovulating or not. Then serum testosterone can be done in the cases of PCOS where there is a history of hirsutism as well. Chlamydia testing is not done in our setup to rule out pelvic inflammatory disease, but this is normally done universally. HIV, chlamydia, hepatitis C and hepatitis B should be checked. And of course, after doing female investigations, so all investigations are done according to the requirement of the patient, according to the history and examination of the patient. But certain investigations such as the hormonal tests, FSH, LH, prolactin and TSH are must for every patient. And of course, when you're checking a patient doing something, you have to rule out the HIV, hepatitis B and C. And lastly, you would like to have transvaginal ultrasound to see the pathology, any pathology in the pelvic organ, so that transvaginal ultrasound can tell you about the size of the uterus, about the ovaries, about the follicles. That can be done by transvaginal ultrasound better than transabdominal. Then lastly, that immediately normally we do not go for a tubal assessment, that means hysterosalpingogram. If a couple has been infertile for more than 2 years in spite of taking treatment, then tubal patency test should also be done. So it's not that once the patient has come after 1 year of marriage and she's unable to conceive, and you write down all these investigations, ideally after history and examination, the hormonal or the blood test should be carried out. But if in spite of taking treatment, proper treatment, you find that they are unable to conceive, then you can think of tubal assessment by hysterosalpingogram as well. Now the investigations for the investigations, further interpretation. Serum progesterone, I said, is the mid-luteal progesterone for checking the ovulation. So one of the important cause of infertility in female may be anovulation, that they do not that they do not uh, do not ovulate. So if you want to check the ovulation in a female, you should be knowing the proper length of the cycle. Means you take proper menstrual history, the length of the cycle, the timing, and also asked about the dysmenorrhea, about the amount of the bleeding, and previous history before marriage, the previous history of menstruation. And for the checking the ovulation, I said that we should go for the mid-luteal serum progesterone. So if it is, whether it is less than 30 nanomoles or it is more than that, that will tell us about the ovulation. Endocrine test is the hormonal test scan. If you think that she's having polycystic ovarian syndrome, so you should also write. Usually, ultrasound should be carried out from 12 after the periods, not during the periods, and after the 10 to 12 day of the cycle, so that the ultrasoundologist can differentiate from the PCOS from the normal ovulation. History of weight gain and loss is also important, and until okay, the book says that you should not start giving ovulation induction drug without the test of tubal patency. So if you think that this test is important, you can carry out the test of tubal patency before starting the ovulation induction. Serum, the level of serum FSH, you should be knowing the normal levels of FSH. It should be under 10 international unit per liter. So if it is more than 10, that means the ovarian reserves are reduced, or the woman having FSH more than 10 may respond poorly to ovulation induction or may need egg donation. Serum FSH, if it is greater than 10 international unit per ml, again it is maybe due to PCOS, and that you need to confirm by ultrasound. So both FSH and LH levels should be less than 10 international unit. This has to be done on the second day of the cycle. Serum testosterone, if it is more than 2.5 nanomillimoles, maybe patient is having PCOS. Again, ultrasound will confirm it, and the history is quite suggestive of this. And then serum prolactin level, if it is more than 1000 international unit per liter, this may relate to pituitary adenoma. But once you do prolactin level, you always check for the galacturia as well. So that can be, you can repeat the test after 3 months, and also exclude hypothyroidism. That means you will go for serum TSH. I think we have discussed that. So that should also be checked. And in case if you suspect high levels of prolactin level, think of pituitary adenoma. For that, we can go for MRI or CT scan. Hysterosalpingogram or hysterocontrast sonogram, if is a investigations for the female partner for checking the tubes, because you cannot check the tubes by ultrasound. So either when you think that all the other factors are normal, the patient is ovulating normal, the hormonal levels are normal, then you need to check the tubal factor as well. So for that, we have got either hysterosalpingogram, or even with ultrasound, we can check the tubal patency test, or the best or the standard way is to do lap and dye test. Lap and dye test means you arrange for diagnostic laparoscopy, and with the laparoscope you can check the inside of the pelvic organs. Along with that, you can do the dye test. That means you will put some dye from the cervix and then dye. If there is spillage of dye on both the sides, that will means the dye and the tubes are patent. So if for intrauterine abnormality or for the presence of polyp, hysteroscopies may be done. And lap and dye will also tell you about the blockage of tube. But That will not tell you exactly the site of the blockage. But if you go for the hysterosalpingogram, that is basically an X-ray test. That is a little painful because you have to hold the cervix and then you will put a dye through the cervix, and the dye will travel up from the uterus into the tubes through the end, and in that case you will take the x-rays, 2 or 3 x-rays, so that you can check whether dye can pass through the femoral end. So even the site of the blockage tube can also be detected for the with the hysterosalpingogram. Endometriosis will be assessed by the again by the history, and when you do laparoscope, sometimes the initial endometriosis can be picked up by the laparoscopy. That is why the laparoscopy is considered to be the gold standard investigation for the couple, for the subfertile couple, because that will assess whether there may be a small or early disease endometriosis, or it is severe endometriosis, because small spots can benefit from diathermy laser. And then for the medical treatment for fertility in cases of endometriosis do not help much. And in those cases, those women or those couple where the endometriosis is in severe stage, means the patient has got adhesions, severe adhesions, and severe dysmenorrhea, and that means very much suggestive for endometriosis, then usually they need to go for IVF. Medical treatment usually do not is not successful in these subfertile women who are suffering from endometriosis. Rubella non-immune offer immunization, and a 1 month contraception. Regarding male infertility, the primary testicular disease, a majority of the case of the male infertility lies in this category. So pathogenesis is poorly understood with no obvious predisposing factor in 50% of the cases. Causes of failure of spermatogenesis is male-descended testes if left uncorrected until puberty, history of mumps, testicular torsion, trauma, infection or neoplasm, Klinefelter syndrome, microdeletion of genes on Y chromosomes. Obstructive male infertility. Obstruction can occur at any level of the male reproductive tract, from rete testi and the epididymis to the vas deferens. Obstruction can be due to congenital inflammatory iatrogenic causes, such as congenital absence of vas like cystic fibrosis, iatrogenic obstruction like vasectomy. Endocrine causes include endocrinolopathies, rarely identified in case of male infertility. The more common conditions are hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, thyroid disorders, adrenal disorders, or hyperprolactinemias. Autoimmune causes. Approximately 12% of the men may have anti-sperm antibodies, which can lead to decreased sperm motility and may impede the binding of spermatozoon to the zona pellucida of the oocyte, hindering fertility. Drugs. The intake of drugs are very important. When you take history, you should always ask about the cigarette smoking, alcohol, opioids, and marijuana, because they can all suppress spermatogenesis. Anabolic steroids, antifungal drug, sulfasalazone, corticosteroids can also affect spermatogenesis, but effect of most of these drugs is reversible. So if they are taking these drugs, ideally you should tell the couple to stop these drugs, or when they are taking the treatment of subfertility. Chemotherapy can cause permanent damage to spermatogenesis. Antidepressants, sedatives, and antihypertensive can also lead to erectile dysfunctions. Environmental factor is also very important. Excessive exposure to heat, chemicals, ionizing irradiation can damage sperm production, and it is important to inquire about the male partner's occupation, whether they had been sitting continuously in a hot weather, or they are using their uh, doing work in chemical factories, or they are under the influence of ionizing radiation. So that is very important when you ask about the occupation of the partner. Ejaculatory disorders, retrograde ejaculation in which the sperm enters the bladder rather than the benign urethra at ejaculation, can follow from neurological disorders, diabetes, or bladder neck or prostate surgery. Regarding the male investigations, after knowing the causes or taking the history, the male investigations of male partner semen analysis, and that should be done after the absence of at least 2 days. The parameter includes semen volume, which is normally 1.4 to 1.7, the number of sperm, 10 power 6 per ejaculation. It should be around 30 to 46. Sperm concentration 15 to 16, and mortality should at least be 40%. Progressive and non-progressive is included. And then sperm morphology, the normal should be at least 4%. The volume of ejaculate, in case it is less than 1.5 ml, it is called hypospermia. If it is more than that, it is called hyperspermia. And if no semen volume, then it is called aspermia. So these are the different means type of, you can say, definitions to know what is the problem of in the semen parameters. If there is problem in the concentration, that is the number of sperm per ml of semen fluid, million per ml, oligospermia means the count is less than 15. Azoospermia means no sperm at all in ejaculation. Motility means the measurement of sperm movement. Asthenozoospermia is the sperm motility if it is less than 40%. Morphology means the appearance of sperm. Teratozoospermia if 40% of sperms are abnormal. Other reports include pH, liquefaction, viability, and presence of other cells like WBCs and RBCs. The pH should be 7.2 or more, and viability should be 58%, at least 40 to 50%. WBC should be less than 1 million. If WBCs are present, that will indicate infection. Liquefaction time should be less than 30 minutes. Serum FSH is also done in male. In case if you find that there is a problem in the semen parameter, then you can go for the serum FSH. Low, it will be low in hypogonadotropic hypogonadism. High testicular failure needs karyotyping to rule out Klinefelter syndrome. Same like in the female, if the FSH levels are very high, we can think of premature ovarian failure. The same way, if the FSH levels are low in the male, that will indicate hypogonadotropic hypogonadism, and maybe high, then you can think of high testicular failure. In that case, we can go for karyotyping as well, or there can be normal obstructive causes as well. So whenever there is a problem in the semen analysis, further hormonal tests are carried out, or the person is shifted to a male urologist who can go for the further investigations in the male partner. Now, regarding the management, if you find that the tests are normal, the semen analysis is normal, the woman is having regular cycle, and the tubes are patent, then you can go for ovulation induction. Ovulation induction means you will give some medicine which will enhance the formation of ovas. So it is given in the form of clomiphene citrate, which is anti-estrogen. So this drug is given in the beginning of the cycle, menstrual cycle, and from second or third day of the cycle, we start with this medicine, and 70% women will ovulate on clomiphene citrate. 25% will get pregnant in 6 months. There is 12% risk of multiple pregnancies, and these drugs should be monitored. when you start ovulation induction, it is not that you will only give the medicine, the drug, and then you have to monitor the patient. You have to tell them to carry out time intercourse from 12 day to 10 day till 10 days on alternate days, so that you can, because that is the time when the ovulation is best. We know the timing of ovulation is 14 plus minus days, and then on 12th day of the cycle we carry out ultrasound to see the dominant follicle, whether the follicles are being formed or not, and if the size of the follicle is 1.8 to 2 or more than that, that indicates that the woman has ovulated. Number two is aromatase inhibitors that can also be given in case the patient does not respond to anti-estrogen. Number three, injections are also given. Gonadotropin injections are also given to enhance the ovulation and to cause the rupture of the follicles. Then ovarian drilling was once done very popularly for patients with PCOS, but nowadays it's not being done very commonly. Regarding surgery, we have talked about the laparoscopy. Laparoscopy is ideally done as an investigation as well, or as a treatment as well. So if you find that the patient is suffering from endometriosis, maybe you can carry out some diathermy through laparoscope, or ovarian drilling can be done in cases of PCOS, or where you think the patient is having polyps or adhesions. Hysteroscopy can tell you the inside of the uterus. Even you can break the adhesions with the help of hysteroscopy. So laparotomy will only be carried out in case there is an ovarian cyst, there is a large chocolate cyst. In case of endometriosis, the laparotomy can also be carried out. Regarding the tubal blockage, it is nowadays the previously we used to do certain surgeries on for the tubal blockage, but it is no longer recommended. If a woman is having tubal blockage, that means the tubes are blocked. The only option for her will be IVF, in utero uh, fertilization. Intrauterine insemination means IUI that has got a success rate of 10 to 20% per treatment, and usually this is done initially. Again, ovulation induction is done, and after, at the time of ovulation, we check the size of the follicle, and after, once the size of the follicle is checked, we prepare the semen. The semen is prepared in the laboratory, and then usually that is they give semen, prepared semen in a syringe along with the cannula, IUI cannula. So when the woman has the time of ovulation, we check with the ultrasound the size of the follicle, and an injection is given to cause a rupture of the follicles. And within 36 hours after we assume that the follicle may be ruptured, we inject that semen via the syringe, via the IVF cannula into the uterine cavity. So this can be done in those women who have got unexplained infertility. That means all the tests are normal or tubes are patent, then only this can be carried out. So this is an easy and less expensive form of treatment in IUI, intrauterine insemination. IVF is a thing which has to be carried out in fertility centers. That means there are certain fertility centers available here in Pakistan, in Karachi as well, which carries out IVF, in vitro fertilization. So there are different methods of doing IVF, and initially they do. That will depend upon the condition of the patient. That will depend upon her age, her history, her problem, whether she has the problem of ovulation, whether she has the problem of polycystic ovarian syndrome, whether she's suffering from endometriosis, and all this has to be checked. Then, according to the history or investigation of the woman, they will carry out the IVF. That counts about 4 to 5 lakhs per cycle. And initially, pituitary downregulation is done. That means they will reduce they will stimulate, do the downregulation of the hormones, and then they will carry out control ovarian stimulation. Means all the hormones they are come uh, they are means